Hello, everyone. It's great to be back on the stage. I'm glad that the room is really full. It's my third time here, and I want to build a little bit on what John Terman said and the work that we've been doing at MIT to talk about entrepreneurship in real situations. So I'm glad that John talked about the real entrepreneurs who are on the stage. I'm very proud to have representation from my home country, Togo, with Aimé from Brazil, Nadine Gonzalez, who is a Carioca, as in the Parisian who lives in Rio, who's a Carioca. We have Neha, who came from India and is going to be talking about her entrepreneurial ventures. And finally, we have Frederick Ottesen, who is the co-founder of Little Sun, and he will tell you a little bit more about what Little Sun is. So in my case, I call it a transcultural entrepreneurial story because it's a transcontinental story. I was born in Lomé, Togo, and then I grew up in Paris and London, and I've been living in New York as an entrepreneur, working as an entrepreneur for the past 16 years. But this discussion today is really related to the work that I've been doing in Africa over the past few years. And what do I see in Africa? It's basically every month I'm there, and I notice that there are opportunities, but there's also a lot of problems on the ground. What are the main problems that we notice as entrepreneurs trying to find solutions? It's that there's a lack of public goods. And because of a lack of public goods, certain people see opportunities and find actionable solutions to the fact that there are no standard public goods that are normally in developed countries provided by the state. So what are the specific challenges? It's living in an ecosystem where things are not functioning. And what I see in Africa is that a lot of the entrepreneurs are women. It's not a mystery or a surprise that I have 3 women on stage with me today. Women in developing nations in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, where I do a lot of work, are leading innovation and often in these conflict zones that John Terman talked about. So we're going to be diving deeper into what we discussed at the workshop yesterday about how do you start a business in conflict zones? How do you start a business when the state has failed and the state is not providing any of the public goods? So the first finding from the workshop, which really was focused on education and re-education, is that there are very significant returns to very simple technologies. You don't have to be Google and Amazon and eBay and Microsoft and General Electric to find solutions for underserved communities. You can find very simple entrepreneurial solutions that can benefit the entire economy. And I focus very much on technology. The work that John and I have been doing is very much focused on technology. And sometimes there's ways to work with corporations and the state to implement real solutions. This is what we're going to be talking about. In a sense, what I see is Aimé, what she's doing in Togo, is the result of pretty much, her life's work. She started as a 14-year-old in Togo. She's been doing it now for 14 years. So you do the math. She's 28 years old, and she spent half of her life as an entrepreneur, and she's already launched 4 companies. So I'm going to now sit, and I want to really have an interactive dialogue with my co-panelists. So Aimé's English is a little bit challenged, but she's the exception. She's going to tell us a little bit about what she's been doing and what she wants to do in the future, but she's going to speak in French.
Bonsoir, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bonjour Claude. Donc je m'appelle Aimé Abratenou, je suis togolaise, j'ai 28 ans, jeune entrepreneur. J'ai commencé il y a 14 ans avec la création d'une ONG pour l'accès à l'éducation, à l'eau potable et à l'assainissement en zone rurale, parce que dans ces zones, l'État fait défaut. Le gouvernement n'a pas d'action, de programme pour accompagner les populations, et donc il a fallu se prendre en main, décider nous-mêmes, parce que nous avons beaucoup de ressources locales et nous pouvons valoriser tout ça. Et donc, j'ai mobilisé une équipe de jeunes quand j'avais 14 ans, donc quand j'étais en troisième. Et après 14 ans, on a mis en place beaucoup d'actions. Une maison de quartier avec une bibliothèque, un espace d'activité socioculturelle pour les enfants, un programme d'accès à l'eau potable avec construction de forages dans les zones rurales, mise en place de latrines sèches, etc. Et à l'issue de pendant ces actions, on a eu recours en fait à beaucoup de dons, d'appels à financement, donc des aides publiques au développement. Et nous avons juste constaté que nous restons dépendants de ces financements-là. Et la question s'est posée, la question de pérenniser nos actions s'est posée, la question de garantir la durabilité de ce que nous faisons et aussi d'indépendance finalement. Et donc nous avons commencé à développer il y a 3 ans des activités économiques qui utilisent essentiellement des ressources, les matières premières locales dont nous disposons pour proposer des produits qui répondent également à des besoins sociaux parce que nous sommes justement nous sommes inscrits dans l'entrepreneuriat social ou encore le social business. Et donc la première initiative, c'est la photo que vous voyez, ça s'appelle Zamke, qui veut dire utilise-moi encore. Ce sont des sacs et accessoires recyclés en matière plastique. Vous n'êtes pas sans savoir que le plastique est un fléau incroyablement désastreux en Afrique, et notamment dans notre pays, le Togo. Nous buvons de l'eau dans des poches d'eau plastique et malheureusement, le geste, c'est que c'est posé par terre et il n'y a pas de système de traitement de gestion de déchets. Donc, l'initiative Zamke propose de collecter ces sachets tout en créant de l'emploi. Donc, il y a des femmes qui collectent ces sachets. Nous leur rachetons ces sachets. Ça apporte un revenu supplémentaire. Ensuite, nous employons des couturiers et couturières dans nos ateliers qui fabriquent, qui proposent des très, très beaux articles et, que nous commercialisons sur notre site de vente en ligne avec d'autres sites de vente en ligne et également au Togo.
Est-ce que tu peux nous expliquer un petit peu comment tu identifies les couturières et la création d'emplois, qui est vraiment cruciale en situation de conflit et de manque de l'État?
Il faut dire qu'au Togo, il y a plus de 50% de la population qui a moins de 30 ans. Et donc, nous sommes vraiment face à cette problématique d'emploi. Et on dit que dans notre région où j'habite, le sud du Togo, la région maritime, il y a plus de 100 000 jeunes filles qui l'éducation a fait défaut à la base, donc la scolarisation a fait défaut à la base. Et donc, parmi ces 100 000, il y a plus de 90% qui cherchent à devenir, à être entrepreneurs dans ce que nous appelons les 3 C, couture, coiffure ou
Cuisine.
Cuisine, voilà. Et donc, ces 3 métiers restent justement les métiers populaires. Et malheureusement, justement, quand elles finissent ces 3 métiers, il n'y a pas d'offre d'emploi. Et donc, c'est facile de les trouver. Pour répondre à ta question, Claude, ce sont des jeunes filles qui ont fini leur formation en couture et qui attendent 50 euros, 80 dollars pour pouvoir acheter une machine à coudre, et donc facilement, on les recrute.
Et juste pour terminer, donc, comment est-ce que leur vie est transformée par l'activité de couture au sein de ton activité entrepreneuriale?
Parce que notre activité est rentable, économiquement viable, pas parce que nous avons justement cette valeur ajoutée sociale importante que l'activité n'est pas du tout rentable, au contraire. Et donc, elles ont leur salaire décent, elles sont déclarées selon la loi, elles ont des conditions de travail très, très, très acceptables, voire plus par rapport à ce qu'offrent d'autres entreprises localement. Et puis surtout, nous mettons beaucoup des systèmes, des dispositifs en place pour pouvoir les valoriser. Elle propose elle-même les modèles de sacs à travailler, à créer, etc.
Merci beaucoup. C'était une très très belle transition. Since we were talking about accessories and the world of fashion and creation inside of underserved communities in emerging markets, we're going to move from Togo to Brazil, where Nadine Gonzalez came, as I said, as a Parioca 9 years ago and moved from Paris to Rio de Janeiro to create jobs and new opportunities in the favelas in Rio. So can you please tell us the story of Moda Fusion and Casa Geração?
Bonjour à tous. So I'm going to speak in English.
Okay.
My English is not that good, but I have to. So let's challenge it. So I have both formation in journalism and in fashion. And when I came for the first time in Brazil, it was in 2005. It was the Brazilian year in France, which was very important. I mean, very for my life. And then, so I came for the first time. I wrote a book the year before about a state in Denmark. And then I thought maybe I could write another book about a state, favela, with my own project, with my fashion skills. And so then I built Modafusion, my association, and who identify and form the women in the favela with fashion. And this was very like a cultural impact too, because fashion, for me, as when I was fashion journalist, it was very like a copy of the Occidental fashion, and they are so creative. I was amazed by their creativity, but then I couldn't see it on the fashion project. So I worked on it with handcraft and all the technical skills they have, the embroideries, I mean, very nice work. And I mean, it was a pure creation with our sophistication. I mean, it has been a very successful. We sell this collection in Colette, for example. It was,
for people who don't know, Colette is a very respected high fashion concept store in Paris, probably the most prestigious one in that high fashion space.
So I did a lot of social project with women, like prostitutes, and was prisoner in Brazil, and then I started to. So it was in all the favela, yes. And for me, I mean, as John said before, it was quite complicated to work with the favela because at that time they was not pacified, but still with my experience, more aggressive, more creative they were, and they are still.
And when I say pacified, I think we should clarify for people, in the favelas in Rio de Janeiro, most people know there was a lot of drug dealing and a lot of chronic violence, as John Turman said, related to this drug dealing and the conflict between the police and the drug dealers. And the mayor of Rio de Janeiro, Eduardo Paes, was very active in pacifying the favelas and sending people to create a new situation of peace. So I think it's important to have that background.
Yeah, it's very important because at that time it was in 2009, 2010, the first pacification. And at that time I started to think about all those young people. I mean, we are not linked, I mean, we were linked like 80% directly or indirectly with drug deal. And so, and as the government was not that impacting in the economic impacting, so I started to think about it, and then we Modafusion, we built. It's not a school, but it's a creative laboratory for young people, for young talent in all the favela. But not only on the favela; it's all Rio de Janeiro. It's free courses for young from the favela, but it's open to everybody who have talent, and they are very creative. And it's like a methodology adapted to them because they don't have, most of them, education or discipline or concentration. So it's quite difficult. But what they want, first of all, it's money. I mean, they want to be famous and they want to have money as quick as possible. So we created a methodology for them to catch it.
Can you take just a few seconds to tell us about the work that came out of the fashion community and telenovelas to inspire them to become models and to become famous and to become creative?
Yeah, actually, they are very fond of telenovelas, so it was fashion. It's very easy to capture their attention, and because we worked on all this, because in the favela at that time there was not black people. I mean, Brazil have changed a lot, and I've changed a lot, and they have changed a lot with. But creativity in fashion is it was very good for all of them, as well as model. We made a community a model agency in the City of God.
The City of God is a very famous favela in Rio, which is the name of a famous film called City of God.
Yeah, and like this one is a good fashion model, and now she's working in Italy as a model, Cheyenne.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe just explain in 1 minute, because we're running out of time,
Yeah.
the concept of Casa Geração. Just in,
So Casa Gelaçon, it's a creative laboratory for young people. We have 20 people, 20 young from all over Rio, and they are selected. I mean, the selection is very important because they have, as it's free, they have everybody wants to do it, really, but they have to really to keep this opportunity. They have to be very to will. I mean, you have some rules. It's not that easy to, and the thing is, they have technical courses, sewing, stylism, modelism, pattern, and also commercial marketing, commercial courses, and the second part of the formation. And then they are creating their own collection with brand, fashion brand. The thing is, they have to be the goal is the professional integration. So all of them, the 20 young, are working with a fashion brand. Mm-hmm. So they are creating a collection with them, and then they are selling it. We are selling it, and they have a percentage of all of it. And so more project or collection they are creating, more money they're gonna have. And we are doing those T-shirts like Forget Ipanema, which is a rich district. Forget Ipanema, go to Vidigal, never trust Le Bon, believe in Vidigal. I mean, we love Paris, London.
Thank you, Nadine. We wanted to move from Brazil. Now we're going to another continent, and we're going to talk about India. And Neha, can you tell us, you are on your third business. You're an entrepreneur. You started 3 businesses already. Can you tell us about what you're doing, Greenway India?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Claude. With this, little bit of time that I have, I want to sort of change the perception that a lot of us have about the bottom of the pyramid market. When we think about rural India or, just any poor rural region, the picture that comes to mind is what we saw just before. It's a picture of, people not being happy, a little bit of sadness. Not this one, though.
The one before.
The one before.
Yes.
But just speaking of India, if we go to the next slide, it's not like that. 38% of all rural Indian households own televisions. So they are connected. They see what is happening across the world.
And then
74%, and these are 2011 Census of India statistics, own cell phones. Again, they are connected. Almost 60% have access to formal banking. This is something that our current government is also working very keenly on. And we just launched a rocket successfully onto Mars. But 87% of all our rural households continue to cook like this. This is perhaps the most prehistoric way to cook. If you look at a demographically average Indian household, the kitchen is 50 years behind the rest of the house for no reason but for the fact that this is an ignored problem because, it's a woman's problem. Men in rural India don't cook. They should, but unfortunately they don't. And it's such a big problem that almost 875,000 premature deaths per annum in India alone are attributed to smoke that comes out of these mud stoves. We cook every day, we cook multiple times a day, and we do it so dangerously.
And this is the solution. Tell us about this.
This is the solution. So my company, we started as a group of engineers, made a stove that cooks on the same fuel. We call it the Greenway Smart Stove. It cooks on the same fuel. It uses less than half the amount of fuel you would burn otherwise. It reduces smoke by 70%, has no noxious emissions. And it's fortunately doing very well. But at times, we've sold a good number of units. The product has good traction and all of that. But the most important lesson out of this entire exercise, I've been doing this for 3 years now, is that this was not a technology problem. Like I said, modern technology permits us to do so many things. This was never a technology problem. It's just a problem of understanding the consumer, giving them enough respect, not being prescriptive in terms of, I think this is a good solution, why don't you buy it? If it's a good solution, people will buy it. There's no questions asked. Because end of the day, customer is queen. So that's
customer is king, which is
queen.
The
customer is
thank
queen.
you. Really good distinction that we have to look at. We were supposed to have more time, but it was cut a bit short. So I wanted Frederick to talk about the amazing discovery and the invention of Little Sun. Thank you, Neha.
I completely agree that custom is queen. Absolutely. And I'm in that lucky situation that I did a presentation on Little Sun yesterday. And so half of you may have already seen that. And to save a little bit of time, I suggest you just ask your neighbor. Because if you talk to the neighbor, you get to talk to each other. And then they will explain what Little Sun is all about. And then I will jump very, very quickly across the slides here. Because I think there's one thing that's really important. When I get on stage, I normally ask myself, what do I want the audience to take with them? And what I really want you to take with you today, because I think that's the key of all the speeches that we've heard, at least I have heard, is that you actually go out and become a doer. And being an entrepreneur for about 20 years myself, I think one of the important things is this. Don't be afraid to fail. Most likely you will fail. That's the nature of being an entrepreneur, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So go out, do it, become an entrepreneur, and don't be afraid to fail. Don't listen to your family, don't listen to society, don't listen to your friends. Do what you believe in 100%. I have another slide that I think I didn't show yesterday that I think is quite important. Yeah, this is another one that I think is really important, and it may seem a little foolish, but most entrepreneurs spend their entire life doing what they do as entrepreneurs. It's an all-body experience. Most of us work probably 10, 15 hours every single day. You just won't be able to do that day after day after day if you don't have fun. Do what you enjoy, do what you like, have fun with it. And this is also a symbol of the journey of being an entrepreneur. It can be a journey into the desert, but it can be a fun journey into the desert if what you do makes a lot of sense. Not only to you, but to the people you're trying to address. Just a very quick one now that we have this slide. Little Sun is about love. Love is about caring, not only about yourself and your family, but your neighbors and everybody else in this little globe. We need to care about each other. We need to do good for each other. That's how we will share ideas and values and products. And the last slide I will show is this one. Because as I said, we do it all the time. And there's one thing that's really important. You will face situations where things are not looking so good. And this little frog is certainly in one of these situations. But the important thing is, don't ever give up. Believe in it and carry on. And thanks a lot for inviting me.
Thank you. I want to give another big round of applause to Aimé from Togo, to Nadine from Brazil, Neha from India, and Frederick from Denmark. Enjoy the rest of the day.